Hi guys, अस्सलाम वालेकुम. Welcome back to another episode of Happy Chirp. आज मेरे साथ हैं Sana Khalid, who happens to be the founder of Minerva and a National Digital Design Conference. Hi Sana, how are you?
Hi, I'm very good. Thank you.
Acha, so before we get into your life and how you've come to where you have, पहले आप ये बताएं कि Minerva है क्या? वहाँ पर आप लोग क्या करते हैं?
So Minerva, basically we work on leadership, personal branding and recruitment. So technically हमारा काम ये है कि हम लोगों को help करें कि how do they navigate their careers, how can they be more visible, how can they design careers that they actually love. Everything else like falls around the same thing. अच्छा, very interesting. So basically ये चीज़ मुझे बहुत interesting इसलिए लग रही है क्योंकि बहुत सारे I think this is a very big gap जो missing है कि लोगों ने पढ़ तो लिया है और they even know okay कि उनको they should be pursuing their dreams or passion, even maybe they are passionate about a lot of things, लेकिन जो एक guidance है वो बहुत ज़्यादा it's been missing. So that's very interesting. हम इसको आगे explore करेंगे. But before that, अच्छा आप मुझे ये बताएं कि where were you born and raised? So I was born in Islamabad, but I spent the first 2 to 3 years of my life in Attak.
अच्छा.
Because my dad was in the army, so we were posted there. So I was born in an army family. My dad was in the army. Both my grandfathers were in the army.
Acha, pure army family.
Very, very army family. So there was a lot of discipline. But it's funny that like my dad's side is very structured. Like my grandfather was very structured and disciplined. And even though my nana was also from the army, but वहाँ पे बिल्कुल कोई discipline.
अच्छा.
So I think I grew up in like a very sort of midway sort of like where I'm structured when I need to be and disciplined when I need to be, but I also have that.
अच्छा हुआ ना, balance हो गया एक sort of.
Balanced. हाँ मेरा बचपन उस तरह से.
And then after Attak.
So after Attak we moved to Islamabad.
अच्छा वापस.
My schooling was from Beacon House till A levels. And then I joined LUMS. LUMS में मैंने 1.5 साल गुजारा.
अच्छा.
I never wanted to go to LUMS. I always wanted to be, not always, but O levels के बाद से I wanted to be a chartered accountant.
Chartered accountant, अच्छा.
So, but chartered accountancy उस वक्त ACA हो रहा था. सिर्फ दुबई was the closest place जहाँ पे ACA हो रहा था. पाकिस्तान में नहीं होता था.
अच्छा.
So I was trying to get my visa and everything sorted, but I was really young और visa नहीं मिल रहा था. अकेली लड़की को नहीं जाने देते थे. All those challenges.
दुबई का वो प्रॉब्लम है. हाँ.
तो और उस वक्त तो बहुत ज़्यादा था. So वो नहीं हो पा रहा था. So everybody said कि you can't just not do anything. So I went to LUMS. And like I spent 1.5 years there.
Which degree?
Of accounting and finance.
अच्छा, accounting and finance. हाँ, makes sense. हाँ.
But 1.5 years throughout, I was trying to somehow still go to Dubai and do my chartered accountancy. So 1.5 years later, I actually got a job in Dubai.
Acha.
And so I moved.
What was that job?
It was in an audit firm.
Acha.
So basically, and I know a lot of people like hate audit and finance and accounts. When you think of an auditor, you think of somebody who sits on their desk और बस वो कीड़े निकालता है and stuff like. But I had a really good time because I think I'm generally curious. तो वो मुझे एक अपॉर्चुनिटी मिली कि हर बिजनेस के अंदर कौन सी चीज़ कैसे हो रही है, कौन क्या करता है, कितना रेवेन्यू बन रहा है, कितना एंड आई वर्कड ऑन रियली इंटरेस्टिंग क्लाइंट्स लाइक ये जो नेटवर्क केबल्स ले करते हैं पानी के अंदर द सी. सो आई गॉट टू वर्क ऑन लाइक सबमरीन्स एंड लाइक ऑल दैट स्टफ. सो इट वाज रियली एक्साइटिंग फॉर लाइक समबडी हु वाज अराउंड 20-21 years old. So I did that for 3 years. And साथ I was also preparing for my exams for ACA. But audit is very, very hectic also.
Yeah, right? That's what I've heard.
साथ में देना and then I wasn't जो उसकी ट्यूशन होती थी ACA की वहाँ पे वो बहुत एक्सपेंसिव होती थी और वो like 7 to 10 days का कोर्स होता था जिसमें they would like to try and cram everything into your head.
So were you like earning and funding your own education? Yeah, was your family?
There was
help from your family.
Absolutely. So बिकॉज वो ऑडिट फर्म में आपको पता है ना बहुत थोड़े से पैसे मिलते हैं. एंड इन फैक्ट आई मीन I was living on bed space. So itne se hi kamre mein, I think we were 9 girls living together, which was another experience of its own. But anyway, so I came back after 3 years with the intention that I'll take 1 year off. And I'm just going to complete my exams and, you know, get this over with. और मैं sabbatical लेके वहाँ से 1 साल का मैं आई थी.
Okay.
But then within 1 week, I got extremely bored. And I was like, अच्छा क्या करें? And that's how Minerva came into being. So I think after, like, the day I landed, उसके 10-12 दिन के बाद, I had the keys to our office. Which was very naive. Like, it was really stupid. I don't recommend that to anybody. Right? But I was maybe 24 years old. And I started that, and, you know, I thought कि बस करेंगे और बहुत amazing होगा और successful हो जाएंगे और
that's the whole, you know, actually naivety की बात करते हैं कि I think अच्छी बात होती है एक तरीके से, because it doesn't stop you from dreaming, because the more naive you are, उतना आप खोल के dream कर सकते हो.
I think anything interesting, exciting that I've done in my life has been because I just didn't know better.
Yeah.
Right? Like if I had known कि क्या होगा, I would never have done it.
Yeah, right? Because I think आप जब naive नहीं होते तो you really focused on के the fears and the obstacles and the problems that are going to come, and obviously that leads to वो फिर आप initiative फिर लेते ही नहीं हो. That leads
afraid कि you know पता नहीं क्या होगा. But like I was so sure कि you know मैं office खोलूंगी और लोग आ जाएंगे बस you know क्या करना है, and of course that didn't happen, so it failed miserably initially.
अच्छा let's rewind a little. LUMS में when you were doing your degree, how did you land a job in Dubai? किस तरह से ये क्या thought कैसे आई, क्या हुआ, how did it happen basically?
Yeah, I think this is again a theme in my life, and I think it has something to do with naivety, but also, so I was trying to get my visas for Dubai, वो नहीं हो रहा था, and then I think one night I was like, you know, I'll just apply to it for a job, and what's the worst that's going, because I was trying कि मैं वहीं पे हूँ, so that अगर कोई interview call आए या कुछ हो तो मैं interview दे सकूँ, and so on and so forth. And interestingly, I just applied. और अगले दिन मुझे एक कॉल आई, और वो कॉल इसलिए आई, द गाय ऑन द फोन, ही सेड he was one of the managers there. He called and he said, the only reason I'm calling you is because you had a very weird email address on your resume.
Oh, that is so interesting.
And I just wanted to know what it means. Why do you have this? And बहुत सुबह का उस वक्त time था, and I was like really disoriented. और मेरा email address था alterego@hotmail.
अच्छा.
So I just rambled, like, and I think I tried and related to like a book I read, and you know मैंने ये किया और फिर मुझे लगा कैसे होना चाहिए. Like I don't know what I said. But that conversation became really interesting. And then he asked me about what Islamabad is like, and he was a Pakistani.
अच्छा.
The firm भी, like, the owners were Pakistani.
अच्छा.
And then like everything happened so quickly. He was like, ठीक है हम कर देंगे, हम visa भी process करा देंगे, सब कुछ करा देंगे. And like I went to my mom and dad like really excited, you know, बस वो कह रहे हैं कि आपने हफ्ते के अंदर you have to come. And obviously they freaked out.
Yeah.
Like ये तो नहीं हो रहा.
Especially because you were so young, और वो अपनी degree भी नहीं पूरी की हुई.
I was like between 20-21.
That's very young for a girl to get a job. अभी degree भी पूरी नहीं हुई, and then next thing to actually move out of the country.
And obviously उनको पता था कि मैं try कर रही हूँ, but उनको भी लगता था कि नहीं होगा. करने तो जो भी कर रही है कुछ नहीं होगा. But खैर वो हो गया, and then somehow like you know, I went, and during this entire time I remember like वहाँ से भी उनको ये डर था कि पता नहीं घर से भाग के तो नहीं आ रही है कि इतनी छोटी है, like हम इसको बुला लें और कल को कोई
उनको responsibility feel हो रही होगी ना.
And like they were also a little surprised कि why would somebody leave LUMS, and like, and I was like, no, you can speak to my parents, कोई मसला नहीं है, सब sorted है, etc. So खैर that happened, and I landed there, and when I landed I had no idea where I was gonna stay.
अच्छा.
So खैर वो eventually वो हुआ, and when I entered the room and I saw like there were 2 bunk beds, so there were 4 people on those bunk beds, and then there were mattresses जिन पे 5 और लोग थे. right? So they were, including myself, 5, and there was hardly any space to move in the room.
हाँ जाहिर है अगर एक कमरे में 5 मैट्रेस और थोड़ा हाँ
And I called my sister and I was like, I'm coming back, because मैंने बचपन से मैं like we are 3 sisters. मेरी middle sister के और मेरा, I'm the youngest, so we have a 9-year gap.
अच्छा
So both the elder ones used to always be in one room, but मेरा हमेशा से अलग कमरा था. So when I went there and I had to live with 9 girls, I called up my sister and I was like, I am coming back on the next flight. And she was like, बेटा इतने जूते पड़ेंगे, थोड़ा सा टाइम गुजार लो, नहीं हुआ तो चलो आ जाना, लेकिन एकदम से नहीं.
हाँ
But खैर I really enjoyed my time there.
अच्छा.
And like the people were really nice जिनके साथ मैं काम कर रही थी. It was very much like a family. I learned a lot there. I was enjoying
That's
a lot,
good.
even though it was very hectic. But yeah. So that's how I landed.
अच्छा so then you said कि you came back, you got bored और फिर मिनर्वा का आइडिया आया. तो इसके ऊपर बात करते हैं कि जब because a lot of the times this happens कि जब आपको एक बिजनेस आइडिया आता है तो उसकी जो इनिशियल थॉट होती है या जो इनिशियल आपको आइडिया होता है समटाइम्स इट कैन बी वेरी डिफरेंट with what it eventually becomes कि होता क्या है. तो उस वक्त जब आपको मिनर्वा का आइडिया आया था, आपने भी तो बताया what it is, क्या आपके दिमाग में था कि what were you making?
So the very initial idea was you could say a better version of a tuition center.
ठीक है,
right?
सही.
Like we started by saying कि हम OA levels की tuition type ही देंगे,
ठीक है,
but our objective will not be getting A grades, right?
ठीक है.
It will be actually for people to learn कि वो क्या पढ़ रहे हैं, उसकी application क्या है. But obviously that was a horrible marketing strategy.
हाँ yeah. हाँ
So parents were like, are you crazy? Like we want A's.
Yes, हाँ हमें उनको होता है बस अपने बच्चों का फ्यूचर सेट करना है, so focus on that. हाँ हाँ.
So that didn't work obviously. And then because ऑफिस भी ले लिया था और पैसे भी नहीं थे और समझ नहीं आती थी, लाइक वी डिड एनीथिंग एंड एवरीथिंग दैट कुड आपका एक विजन होता है कि मैंने ऐसी जगह बनानी है, बट व्हेन यू आर स्ट्रगलिंग टू मेक एंड्स मीट, वो विजन मिशन सब पीछे रह जाता है और आप कहते हैं कि बस क्या करें कि किसी तरह खर्चे निकल आए, राइट? सो वी डिड एवरीथिंग फ्रॉम लाइक अरेंजिंग ढोलकीज टू लाइक
अच्छा
birthday parties and movie nights and everything. So it sort of converted into like this community space.
Yeah, so basically any service that you were able to offer at the time, you decided to do it. जो भी आप लोगों के अंदर capability थी वो आपने की. Good. I think that's smart.
And I don't know if I should be disclosing this, but Minerva के नाम से और भी organizations हैं, ठीक है, जिनमें से एक printing करते हैं इस्लामाबाद में.
अच्छा अच्छा.
And at that point somebody reached out to us thinking we were that
Minerva, हाँ.
And they were like, आप लोग printing करते हैं, हमें bottles print करानी है. We were like, हाँ हम करते हैं.
Good.
So we did that as well. हमने printing उन्हीं से कराई थी, लेकिन we made a little bit of money there. So we did anything and everything that could just
sustain करने के लिए, चलाने के लिए. हाँ हाँ. अच्छा, so जब आपका ये thought थी कि आपने एक a better version of a tuition center बनाना है, तो होता ही है कि मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम, अगेन आई गो बैक टू जब एक बिजनेस आइडिया आता है, यूजुअली लोगों का बिजनेस आइडिया इसलिए आता है बिकॉज देयर इज़ अ प्रॉब्लम जो वो आइडेंटिफाई करते हैं सोसाइटी में. वो कहते हैं कि यार आई वांट टू सॉल्व दिस प्रॉब्लम, और फिर उसके लिए देयर सोल्यूशन इज़ देन दैट बिजनेस आइडिया. तो वो क्या प्रॉब्लम आइडेंटिफाई आपने की थी?
So when I moved back, a lot of my friends had just graduated and they were looking for jobs and they were really struggling with it. And some of them were obviously people who had just graduated from LUMS. And I was thinking, if they're having trouble finding jobs, then, what about the others? And so that's where it started. But then I couldn't figure out कि अच्छा इसमें पैसे कैसे बनेंगे, कौन पैसे देगा. And so I thought कि maybe we could start a little earlier जब OA levels में आप जाते हैं, and if you are groomed a little better at that point in time, maybe you can find better jobs, right? You're better, more aware of what's happening in the world. So it wasn't just limited to curriculum, but also sort of grooming and soft skills and all of that. So that was the idea. And उस ज़माने में अब मुझे नहीं पता, but उस वक्त तो ट्यूशन सेंटर्स were like a really big thing.
Yeah.
And they were minting money, and I was like,
हाँ, they were, that's true. हाँ, मतलब लोग एक्चुअल में स्कूल में तो पढ़ते नहीं थे, सब ट्यूशन सेंटर से ही पढ़ के वहाँ पे ज़्यादा पैसे खर्च कर रहे थे. हाँ, दैट्स ट्रू. सही. अच्छा, सो मिनर्वा, आपने इस थॉट से स्टार्ट किया. अच्छा, and this was, you were 24 years old?
I was 24.
Okay. Which year was this?
This was 2011.
2011. It's been many years. हाँ, decade से ज़्यादा, decade हो गया आपको. 11 years हो गए. That's amazing. ठीक है. So, मिनर्वा, आपने इस्लामाबाद में शुरू की उस टाइम पे?
Yes.
अच्छा, फिर आपने अपनी अकाउंटेंसी कंप्लीट की? नहीं की. क्यों छोड़ दी?
उसकी ज़रूरत नहीं पड़ी. And then while I was doing Minerva, I was also on the lookout for other opportunities. Like I was still exploring quick consultancies and so on and so forth. But मुझे यहाँ पे finance departments में मज़ा नहीं आ रहा था, and I felt like everything was so shady.
अच्छा.
And I didn't like the environment. Okay. Honestly. So I did a few consultancies, but I realized that, you know what, the other stuff that I'm doing is much more exciting. And it's more fun, and there's a lot of opportunity to explore and learn and so on and so forth. And I was like, हाँ कर लूँगी. You know, कुछ अर्से में कर लूँगी. And I, for really like quite a few years, I kept thinking मैं कर लूँगी.
हाँ, you kept holding on to that thing.
Because obviously it was also something that I like had decided कि बस मैंने करना है.
आपको उस चीज़ से थोड़ी अटैचमेंट होती है ना कि ये चीज़ मैंने करनी थी.
You spend working because you wanted to do that. So एक वो था. But then I think a few years down the lane, I was like, you know, nobody needs this. I've learned what I had to. It really helped in the work that I was doing in terms of, you know, finances and all of that. You know, processes, structures, everything. But I didn't really need to complete those exams to move forward.
Yeah, like basically वही वाली बात है कि आपने अपनी learning तो actual ले ली थी from the degree, and obviously आपकी जो पहली job थी, right? So then you अच्छा, then you quit that job because you were on sabbatical, right? आपने वो
I hadn't quit actually. They'd given me a 1-year leave.
Yeah,
and I promised to come back a year later. But then obviously I told them कि
you're not. ठीक है, वो आपने छोड़ दिया. अच्छा, so in your profile ये भी है कि आपने the Hive में काम किया. When did that happen?
That was around 3.5 years ago.
अच्छा.
Because I moved from Islamabad to Karachi.
वो क्यों हुआ?
My husband got a job there.
अच्छा.
So we moved and उसी वक्त Hive की कराची की branch खुल रही थी.
हाँ, अच्छा.
So I had met the founder in Islamabad a couple of times. And so when I moved there, he was like, you know, you're here and I need somebody because he's based in Islamabad.
Yes, right? I know.
So he was like, you know, I'm based here. I can't be doing this. So if you can
lead there. So you were CEO there?
No, I joined as a community manager.
अच्छा, ठीक है.
So I did that for a while, and I thought it was a very good opportunity because when you move to a new city, I felt like that was a great opportunity to like connect with people, meet new people. And so Minerva site pe chal raha tha, and everything could continue because Minerva has for the most part been remote and online. So so that's how I just ended up with that job. And then almost 2.5 months ago, I resigned as the CEO. But it was a great 3.5 years because I felt like because my work has always been around people and how they can work better, this was like an opportunity to also create a space where they can work better. Like I've worked on projects and programs and workshops that can help them do that. But this was also like an opportunity to really work on a physical space and how that can help people work better.
अच्छा, so जब आपने when you moved to Karachi because your husband got a job there, तो उस वक्त what were your thoughts on Minerva? Because वो तो इधर था ना उस time पे. So what did you think? How were you going to?
So I think again, I am generally an overthinker, but जब I think ज़िंदगी के जो सबसे बड़े instances या moments होते हैं बस उनमें नहीं सोचा. Every day I overthink, but so उस वक्त भी I think I was just excited like कि क्या होगा वहाँ जाके क्या होगा. But like I said, Minerva has for the most part been remote. So for the first maybe 2 years we had like a physical space. फिर वो CDA वाला scene हुआ, वो घर में था, उन्होंने कहा बंद कर दें. तो वो initially तो forced closure था कि हमें physical space बंद करनी पड़ी और सब.
Then you had to do digital. हाँ.
But then we had always been, for the most part, been digital and online and remote. So it wasn't really much of a problem because most of our services, our workshops were online. And then if we needed to sort of book a meeting room or an event space, we could do that. So that didn't seem like much of a problem.
Achha, so in your work at Minerva, you talked about personal branding, right? That is something that you do. Can you tell us a little about personal branding, what it is, how you help people with that?
So the very easy way to explain personal branding would be to help people become more visible, right? Like, for that could be for multiple reasons. Maybe you want to be more visible within your organization because you're looking for a job. Sometimes you just feel invisible because you don't have clarity on what you want to do. So sometimes that visibility is just for yourself. Sometimes it's because you want to monetize your personal brand. So maybe you want to be speaking at different places, or you want to be publishing a book and earning from that, or whatever, right? So personal branding ki different forms ho sakti hain. But a lot of times people think that personal branding is really like, बहुत सारे लोग कहते हैं कि why should I care कि लोग क्या सोच रहे हैं मेरे बारे में? Why should I work on my personal brand? But personal branding is a very, very introspective thing because you can't have a brand that contradicts who you are. So you really first have to figure out कि आप हैं कौन?
Yeah.
A lot of people are not happy in their jobs simply, but they don't realize कि उसकी reason ये नहीं है कि the workplace is bad or the work itself is bad, but it's just that it doesn't align with who you are as a person or what you enjoy.
The thing is that if the work you're doing, it doesn't align with your core, you will always be unhappy no matter how much it pays, and even if it's the best working space in the world.
Absolutely.
लेकिन अगर आपके core में it doesn't align with who you are, तो हाँ.
Like, I mean, if you don't like being among a lot of people and you get a job which is very customer facing, or it's organizing events or whatever, which requires a lot of human coordination, it could pay you really well. You could be really successful at it. You might even become good at it, right? But you'll still feel like mujhe maza nahi aa raha. You'll be more exhausted than you will be happy doing that job, right? So personal branding is really कि अगर मेरे बारे में कल कोई कुछ सोचे, तो like what do I want people to remember me for? And like regardless of whether you realize or not, everybody does have a personal brand. Like there's the foodie and there's the person who always knows which movie is out now and shows में क्या हो रहा है and shopping कहाँ से करनी. So everybody has a personal brand. But when you do it consciously, you're taking control of that narrative, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
So yeah, I think what you mean here is that it's basically about developing. Personal branding is very close to developing a sense of self-awareness.
Yes.
Okay, yeah,
and projecting that to the world.
Yeah, projecting that to the world. So basically, आप अपनी पहले self-awareness करो, get to know who you are and then create that as your identity.
Absolutely.
For people to see as well. कि, this is who I am.
Absolutely.
I think that's very important because when you are self-aware, जब आपकी अपनी identity is very clear to you, so obviously people sort of treat you that way as well.
Yes.
Yeah, and a lot of times, like interestingly, आपने बोला है कि क्यों personal branding important है. I think I'd like to add here कि मुझे लगता है कि important इसलिए भी है कि so if your personal branding is strong, you are well suited for something, and it shows, then आपको opportunity मिलेगी for things.
Absolutely.
If it's lost, if people don't see कि आपके अंदर ये potential है, this is who you are, this is what your strengths are or your weaknesses are, so people might not even approach you for opportunities that are actually meant for you because they don't see the brand.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
A lot of the aversion to personal branding comes from like, people thinking कि मैं क्यों किसी को कुछ prove करूं. But at the end of the day, you're responsible for the opportunities that come to you. Nobody else is responsible for bringing you that opportunity, right?
Yes.
And I mean, it's not just work related. Like I always say कि आपके बारे में लोग क्या सोचते हैं, ऐसा तो नहीं उसका impact नहीं है. आपकी शादी किससे होगी, आपको job कौन देगा, I mean, वो आपके बारे में कुछ सोचेंगे तो वो आपको so I guess it's extremely important कि the first step is definitely to just understand who you are, and that's not an easy task. And I feel a lot of people feel lost. Like sometimes हमें भी होता है existential crisis होता है साल में 3-4 दफा. But it's important to keep exploring.
So my question would be now कि Minerva के clients किस तरह के होते हैं? What are your different, because बहुत सारी चीज़ें आ सकती हैं ना इसके अंदर, बहुत सारी तरह के लोग होते हैं.
So individuals भी हैं,
ठीक है,
organizations भी हैं. For a very long time, the personal branding clients were mostly outside of Pakistan, because Pakistan में इतना ज़्यादा लोगों को समझ में concept नहीं था. Now more recently pandemic के बाद से a lot of people started coming in for personal branding Pakistan में भी. And I think उसका एक reason ये भी था कि क्योंकि startups एकदम से बहुत ज़्यादा हुए, तो the founders felt like their personal brand mattered.
Yes, 100%. Very good point.
So it was from a client perspective, mostly C-level founders. Okay? But at the same time, there was once in a while also a creative who feels like, I'm really creative, I can produce really good work, but I just don't know how to put that across.
So would this mean do you help people, does this include helping people build their portfolios and stuff, or no?
No. So okay. We do guide them on it. क्या कर सकते हैं, because we're also working on career navigation and so on and so forth. So, and we work with a lot of organizations जिनके लिए हम hiring कर रहे होते हैं उनके behalf पे भी. So we understand what a portfolio should be like and what you should include and so on and so forth. And we can guide on it.
CVs and resumes and portfolios and
so we do CV makeovers, we do LinkedIn makeovers. And portfolio mein we can do like a little bit of, you show us, we give you feedback. That's something that we can do. But again, this is also a misconception, right? When you come to a personal branding strategist, you feel like ये बना के देगा ना personal brand.
नहीं.
But it's a lot of work from you.
Yes.
Right? Like, because it's personal.
It's about you. Yeah. You have to do the main work.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you don't show up, or if you don't, sometimes people want content, or they're ghostwriters and all of that. But the expertise has to come from you. They can put it in better words or better form. But yeah, it is a lot of work.
Yeah. बात ये है कि it's about you, so it has to come from you, and you help people make it more attractive, or you can say more apparent to others.
Yes.
Right? वही चीज़ आपने उठानी है, तो अगर वही चीज़ missing है, तो then you can't help the client. हाँ, makes sense. ठीक है. So that's personal.
That's personal branding.
Personal branding. What else? You mentioned a couple of things, right? So और आप क्या करते हैं वहाँ पे?
So then there's
leadership. अच्छा.
Recruitment is fairly straightforward. हम different organizations को help करते हैं building their teams. So we do the sourcing, screening, whatever for them. We find them good candidates and we connect them to those.
Kind of like जो human resources. Kind of like उनका job.
आप कह सकते हो, right? So mostly जो हमारे clients हैं, again, there are a lot of startups that are looking to hire design के लोग, technology के लोग, software engineers, so on and so forth. We basically help them save time on going through and all those resumes and so on, and maybe identifying actually कि कौन अच्छे लोग हो सकते हैं. So that's another piece. This is relatively new, like it's been around 2.5-3 years since we've been doing this. Pandemic के शुरू में हमने ये start किया था. And then there's leadership development. So a lot of leadership development. पहले जब when I was in Islamabad, so we did a lot of work with organizations.
ठीक है.
So for example, somebody would come to us and say कि we want to build capacity for the women in our organization because not many can reach up to this level.
Yeah.
या communication skills. So like leadership को भी आप बहुत सारी चीज़ों में divide कर सकते हैं. It's a mix of a lot of skills. So we would give those trainings. But it's a little difficult because a lot of times people come with the expectation कि communication skills की आप 4 घंटे की workshop करा दें. And I would always tell them that अगर अंग्रेजी बोलने का मसला है वो 4 घंटे में तो हल नहीं होगा. So there has to be either something that solves that, or there has to be another way to solve the problem, which will most likely not be a very quick one day kind of solution. So we've worked very selectively with organizations that really understood कि अच्छा हमें वाकई इम्पैक्ट चाहिए. सिमिलरली अगर women are not making it to the top, तो ज़रूरी नहीं है कि women don't know what to do. ये भी हो सकता है कि जो ऊपर बैठा हुआ है वो ऊपर नहीं जाने दे रहा.
हाँ बिल्कुल.
So most of the times it required a longer process than they came expecting. So we were very selective कि somebody who really understands what impact they want, and they genuinely care कि this is what we want to achieve. Because for a lot of organizations, the learning and development budget is something that needs to be just exhausted. Right? Because वो पढ़ा हुआ है, उसको क्या करें,
क्या करना है, हाँ करते हैं, हाँ.
So उसकी वजह से we were very selective.
That's
and
good.
then over time we realized कि उस तरह के clients ढूंढना बहुत मुश्किल है.
I'm sure, हाँ.
So then we started working more with individuals who again, so it became like a mix of personal branding and leadership.
So I think इसमें ज़्यादातर startup founders type लोग ही होंगे.
Startup founders भी होते हैं, but then there are also, like I said, I mean, sometimes there are women who don't know how to navigate a certain situation, or there also a lot of times there are first time managers or first time CEOs who are now in that position, but they're not sure कि क्या करना है या कैसे करना है. So it's mostly more coaching and a little bit of leadership development.
वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग. अच्छा, अब ये आपने मुझे चीज़ें बताई हैं, इसकी अपटेक अब पाकिस्तान में कैसी है? लाइक डू यू थिंक दैट इट्स लाइक पीपल आर रियली टेकिंग दिस अप, रियली डूइंग दिस?
Personal branding, definitely.
Okay.
And over the past couple of months एकदम से बहुत ज़्यादा like हमारे पास workload भी आया है. And what I've seen is that the audience has shifted. So it's not just the C-level executives and the founders, but these are just people who don't know कि career में next step हम कैसे लेंगे. So usually these are people with some level of experience, like 7-ish years or above, but they're not CEOs or founders or entrepreneurs. They're regular professionals, but they're just trying to navigate or move to the next level. So I think it's improving, definitely. Maybe 5-6 years ago, if you'd asked me this question, I would have said it's really difficult to find a client in Pakistan.
But वैसे you're saying कि ज़्यादातर लोग जो आते हैं they are somewhere in their career, right? But
career type.
हाँ, लेकिन जो बिल्कुल beginners हैं starting, you guys are open to that as well, like.
हाँ, so we actually do a program which is called the Students Training and Internship Program.
अच्छा.
We have around 300 people who graduated from this program over the course of 11 years. And basically we work, so it's less of an internship program, and it's basically like a boot camp for career readiness.
Acha.
So
nice.
Yeah, we do that as well.
That's good. That's very interesting. So let's talk a bit about with your experience in this entire thing. Let's talk a bit about women. कि आपने इसमें क्या देखा कि what was there any difference in the way that women had to be dealt with, या उनके जो उनके leadership skills develop करना, या उनके जो struggles थे they were different, या उनके लिए जो आपको approach लेनी पड़ी it had to be different? Because लड़कियों की जो lives होती हैं they have more layers.
Yes.
You know, it's not that straightforward. Yes. There are things, there are issues. What has your experience been like in helping women with careers or helping women in leadership roles specifically?
So I've worked with two types of, I'll divide it into two categories. One is women who've taken a career break and they want to return to work. And the other is just generally any woman. Right?
ठीक है.
And so obviously they have different requirements. Like we can talk about, you know, everybody needs that equal treatment or equal होना चाहिए, होना चाहिए, and अगर, you know, salary same मिलेगी तो फिर काम भी same करना पड़ेगा. Like, you know, and these are really a lot of gray areas, right? There's no right answer to this question.
बिल्कुल, हाँ.
But at the same time, we have to understand that the role of a woman in our society is not the same as the role of a man. When अगर कोई बंदा घर जाता है तो उसके ऊपर बहुत सारी एक्सपेक्टेशंस नहीं होती कि उसने घर जाके ये भी करना है, which might be changing now. Like I see my friends and ourselves, and we're very different from, you know, the regular people who had like बीवी चाहे नौकरी कर रही है नहीं कर रही बट घर आएगी तो खाना भी बनाएगी और बच्चों को भी देखेगी ना. बट जनरल एटमोसफेयर तो यही है और उसको चेंज ओवरनाइट नहीं किया जा सकता. इट्स अ रियली लॉन्ग प्रोसेस. तो तब तक आप क्या कर सकते हैं? And I think, again, for each organization, the answer would be different. You can't have one solution for every organization, and you can't have one solution for every woman. So larger organizations that have that kind of infrastructure, a daycare center makes life so much easier for so many women.
Such a good point.
Right?
Yes.
But if I expect an organization with like a 5% team that's really struggling with finances and so on and so forth, uske liye wo facility dena possible nahi. Right? So for example, Minerva mein we have 2 women now who have returned after career breaks of around 10-12 years.
Acha. That's a big career break.
And they're, I think, the most amazing women I've met. Not just as people, but as professionals, right? And I feel like when a woman is returning from a career break, she has something to prove to herself and to the world. So she's much more concerned, ambitious, takes more responsibility.
Motivation ज़्यादा होती है. हाँ.
And I was having this conversation with a friend, and she was like, I am vicious about my time at work because मैं अपना बच्चा घर छोड़ के आई हूँ.
Yeah. So you have to make those hours completely worth it.
Yes.
Yeah, the value.
I don't want to waste even 5 minutes of my time there talking about random stuff. I want to get the job done, right? So I feel like there's that aspect. But there's also the aspect where, I mean, again, I don't know, I don't want to stereotype. Your conversations बहुत difficult होती हैं because, like I said, there's a lot of gray area.
Yeah, and they're very, you have to be very sensitive, of course.
But, there are differences in how women and men operate and how they think.
अच्छा.
On a wider level. Of course, आप इसको generalize नहीं कर सकते.
ठीक है.
But the kind of structure, compassion that women bring into a workforce is extremely important.
Acha.
Right? And we've seen with organizations that have that, the productivity is higher, people feeling safe in that environment. All of these things are extremely important in the workspace. So I've been a great advocate of women returning to work. I think एक तो financial independence generally हर औरत के लिए बहुत ज़रूरी है. Not just, I think लोग generally इसको एक negative form में लेते हैं कि अच्छा मियाँ से आज़ाद होना चाहती है इसलिए. But you'd never know कि ज़िंदगी में क्या होगा, right? Like कल को कुछ भी हो सकता है. If you have to take care of yourself, how are you going to do it? So financial independence generally बहुत important है. And then from a business perspective, if you look at all the research that's available, there's ample proof to suggest that this is not just a fad कि अच्छा हम ख़वातीन को वापस लेके आना चाहते हैं.
ठीक है.
But there are results to prove that profitability पे impact होता है, employee motivation पे impact होता है, the feeling of safety पे impact होता है, which are all things that make a lot of difference in the work environment. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, it does. It does.
But I just feel so strongly about this. I went on like a ramble.
No, that's good. Very, very insightful. आपने बोला कि women bring a lot of compassion to the workplace. What do you mean by that?
So I feel like generally in leadership roles, और ये मैंने भी बहुत सुना है अपने career में, कि you're too soft. But I think most of my team members would not say that. But some men would.
Yes. Yes.
And I just feel like if I can create an environment where people feel safe, they feel like they can voice their opinion.
Yeah. Vulnerability is welcomed and
बिल्कुल.
Intimidation नहीं है ना?
बिल्कुल. And they can easily come up with ideas and nobody is going to snub them
or judge them.
हो रहा है, तो फिर क्या मसला है? Like why do I need to have a डंडा in my hand?
बहुत अच्छा point है.
उसके बगैर काम ज़्यादा अच्छा हो रहा है. So I feel like वो एक element generally like missing hota hai when they're men, which again I feel like it's a lot of generalization, but hai aisa,
mostly aisa hi hai, bilkul
mostly aisa hai. And then obviously when a woman is in a leadership role, again people can have different opinions about this because again gray area, but I feel like a lot of women who've been through that process of moving up will help other women and they become role models, right? So another woman working under her will feel like, okay, this is possible.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
At least I can try. At least I can think about being there. But when you see all men, you're like, okay, bas this is
thought नहीं
it.
आती. Yeah, you don't see that role model, you don't see yourself there as well. हाँ, बहुत interesting.
So for all these reasons, I think it's very important.
Very important, yeah. बहुत आपने अच्छी बात की compassionate leadership के ऊपर, क्योंकि in fact you know we think कि, और हमेशा से ऐसे ही रहा है. I feel like अब थोड़ा सा change हुआ है, but पहले all bosses were like mean, you know, there was always very hard power when it came to being a boss, you know. But actually you know soft power का impact ज़्यादा होता है. And I think it's not about being a boss, it's about being a leader.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and if you lack the compassion, then you're not a leader, then you're just a boss telling people what to do. But a true leader is one who you know, लीडर का वो होता है कि वो जो अपने लोगों को अपने साथ लेकर चलना, उनकी चीज़ों को फील करना, उनको स्पेस देना, उनको फ्रीडम देना, and you know make them your team, not just your like workers or just your employees, but
and I think compassion में लोग समझते हैं अच्छा कि compassionate होने का मतलब है कि अगर कोई गलती करेगा तो उसको डांटनी पड़ेगी. That's not what it means.
No, that's
it just means that you empathize with people and then also try and figure out, you uplift them. How can I uplift this person? If somebody is struggling, how can I help them achieve better? And that actually is for the benefit of the business.
Yes, right? I was just going to say that. I was going to say कि पहले ज़माने में, अभी भी होता है वैसे, कि you know कंपनीज के जो बॉसेज हैं और लीडरशिप पोजीशन में जो लोग होते थे उनके लिए होता था अपनी ग्रोथ और अपनी कंपनी की ग्रोथ. और बट अ ट्रू लीडर अंडरस्टैंड्स कि उसके एम्प्लॉयज़ की ग्रोथ is important for the company.
Absolutely.
Let them grow, have them grow. उनको जितनी opportunities मिलेंगी, जितनी चीज़ें होंगी, उनको जितना conducive environment मिलेगा, जितना उनको creative freedom मिलेगा, the better they are going to perform, which in eventuality is best for the company.
Recently somebody asked me this question, you know, how would you react if somebody you hired was better than you at what they do, right? And I was like, isn't that the point?
Isn't that the point? Because you need those people who have what you're lacking.
Absolutely.
Yes, exactly. Because it's a team, you know.
And that reflects well on me as well, right? If they're performing well, it shows that I'm bringing results, right?
Yeah.
So, but I guess I do see these things changing.
Yes, so do I.
I do feel still that sometimes it's more of like the optics, जिसकी वजह से लोग कुछ initiatives लेते हैं और करते हैं. But चलो अगर उसके लिए भी कर रहे हैं, तो at least it's bringing something better to the table. But I think compassion is extremely important for business.
For business.
Yeah.
Achha, so since you've been in a leadership role for a very long time, बहुत young, बहुत सालों पहले जब female bosses का इतना और ना women led businesses का इतना था, अब तो it's a thing, right?
Yeah.
And mashallah we see lots of women. This is a really long time ago. So how would you say कि as a woman in a leadership position, what are some things that you learned पहले ये, and then ऐसी क्या चीज़ें थी जो आपको struggle हुई कि you know woman in a leadership position, क्या आपको problems face हुए, और and everything that you're saying right now, obviously it's something that you've learned over time.
Yeah.
Right? So वो क्या difference है, वो कैसे आया ये सारी learning? I'm sure कि start में बहुत सारी चीज़ें I'm sure you've made your fair share of mistakes, learned from them. What would they be? पहले कैसा था, अब कैसा है? That sort of your journey as a leader is what I'm trying to ask.
So I think most of my learnings are not relevant to, you know, they can't be classified as learnings of a female leader.
Right.
I think they're just general learnings.
Okay.
And for a very long part of my career, and I think again this goes back to naivety, right? When you don't know what women, you know, what mansplaining is and like what that means, you don't think about it that way and you just keep charging on, right? So for a really long time, I don't think I ever felt like because I'm a woman, somebody's dealing with me differently. In more recent years, I've felt that more.
Is it because of the awareness of it?
It could be. It could be.
क्योंकि जब आप नाइव होता है आपको पता ही नहीं होता आपके साथ कुछ हो रहा है.
It could also be that maybe my audience So for example, Hive में मेरी audience different है, Minerva में मेरी audience बिल्कुल different है, and they're coming to me for something different. Hive में people are coming to me for something different. So I think somewhat yes, कि वो awareness की वजह से भी था कि I was now noticing that there is a difference. Where if I have to make a point, I have to literally raise my voice for me to be heard. Compared to like हम ये बहुत मजाक उड़ाते थे कि जब हम डिजिटल डिज़ाइन कॉन्फ्रेंस के लिए स्पॉन्सरशिप लेने जाते थे तो हमें पैसों से ज़्यादा मशवरे मिलते थे एंड पीपल वुड टॉक अबाउट नहीं मेरा ये ख्याल है कि आप इसको अगर ऐसे कर लें तो बहुत अच्छा होगा. एंड देन वन डे आई टुक माई हस्बैंड विद मी एंड दे वर टॉकिंग अबाउट नंबर्स एंड आई वाज लाइक व्हाई. So khair, I mean, of course, awareness is definitely aspect hai, but generally the things that I've learned, one, I think I'm a very different person from what I was when I started Minerva. One, I was a perfectionist, and I realized that held me back from doing so many things. Yeah. So I've not completely gotten over it, but I'm more aware of it. And when I think like, this is just stopping me from actually just getting anything done, I'm more aware of making sure that it goes out regardless of what it is.
I think वो एक balance है कि आप देखो कि अच्छा ये अब ज़्यादा इतना इसको करने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. It should just be good enough. It's okay if it's not perfect.
Figure out. And even if it's not good, देखी जाएगी, कर लेंगे. Next time सही कर लेंगे. Yeah. So one is that, and I think because of my perfectionism, I was also a micromanager. And I think if you ask my team members from back then, they would say कि हम तो ऑफिस आते थे कुछ करते नहीं थे क्योंकि सना ही करते.
No, and I think that's actually part of any bosses or leaders journey. शुरू में आपको control चाहिए होता है because you feel like trust issue start होता है ना, trust issue होते हैं, it's your thing, हाँ मुझे पता है मैं करूँ. You want to have control over every aspect, and I think it takes some time to learn to let go of that control and be like it's okay, you do it.
So now I'm more comfortable
and trusting.
And I feel like वही वाली चीज़ है ना कि at the end of the day, what matters for the success of a business or a project or whatever, right? Is it my ego and my control issue?
A lot of the time वो उस control और उसकी वजह से चीज़ें रुकी भी होती हैं, वो आगे नहीं चलती क्योंकि आपने हर चीज़ को
bottleneck बन जाते हैं.
bottleneck बन जाते हैं, बिल्कुल. मैंने भी किया है, बहुत किया है.
So definitely one is that hire people who are better than you and then let them do their job. Don't get in the way. Of course, that doesn't always mean कि आप बस जाने देंगे, right? Like sometimes you'll give them feedback, which is important. And I think a lot of employees actually crave feedback, but हम डरते feedback देते हुए. But I also feel like उनकी तरफ से एक expectation होती है कि that's the only way they learn. Right? Yeah. 3, I think a lot of stress on identifying what your culture, what kind of culture you want to build, and reflecting it into every piece of your organization, and hiring people who also have the same values. I think that's extremely important. We've struggled a lot with people, and it's not like those people were bad people or whatever. It was just that they didn't fit into the value system that you have and what you want to build or what your vision is or whatever, right?
I'll give you an example of that. जिस तरह हमारे working space में the language that we use in our office, or the way that we treat each other, it's a very big thing, or the way that we treat our guests. And because we've been to other places and other offices, and हम लोग शूट भी कर रहे होते हैं, बाकी लोगों के साथ भी अपने शूट्स भी करते हैं, तो वी नो कि हम किस तरह की लैंग्वेज और किस तरह एक दूसरे के साथ इंटरेक्ट करते हैं. And I noticed the way that people were interacting with each other, people were speaking with each other, the way that they treat people who come in or go. और वो हमारे ऑफिस में जैसे that's a very big value, and if somebody doesn't fit into that, even if they're good at that work, we can't let that compromise our culture.
Absolutely.
Because it's very important for our workplace. Because what I've learned and noticed कि when we've hired people or had people who don't fit in the culture, it affects the entire team.
Absolutely. वो एक बंदे का भी different attitude, या अगर उसमें थोड़ी सी भी वो एक toxicity है, या difference in attitude या way they approach things है, it's very easy for other people to become demoralized or demotivated or feel like they don't fit in somehow. So I definitely feel like that's extremely important.
Yeah, and also sometimes what happens is कि बाकी लोग भी वही चीज़ करना शुरू हो जाते हैं. ये भी होता है ना, उस बंदे का इन्फ्लुएंस भी होता है कभी कभार ऐसे लोगों का. So लोग लेट बैक हो जाते हैं कि अच्छा ये भी चलता है. हाँ.
The third thing is definitely empathy. And just yesterday we were like, me and my team were having this conversation. How do you draw the line between being nice and making a rational decision? Right? Because in smaller teams, everything is so personal, right? Like, how do you make sure that this is not personal? Any feedback is not personal. Firing somebody is not personal. Anything is not personal. And I think I don't think I've cracked it yet, but I do know that it's very important to create that balance where you can empathize and be compassionate, but at the same time make the right decisions also. So I think that, and I think then there's a lot of things I've learned from people in terms of what not to do, like who I don't want to ever be.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And I mean that again has to do with treating people with respect, treating their time with respect. Again, I really want to stress on what you said about the words that you use.
Yeah.
So a lot of times मैंने देखा है, this is again something that we help startup founders with, is defining culture. Because culture decks usually,
you do that.
Because that has a significant impact on building a team. Right? So beanbag or foosball table, or that's all nice and cool.
Yeah, and it's a fluff. ऊपर से तो वो कोई भी रख दे.
Similarly, like saying that we're flexible. But with flexibility, for example, comes trust. So identifying that culture and reflecting it in every piece of your organization is so important. Because otherwise वो culture नहीं build हो सकता. So I think the importance on culture, generally I think my biggest learning is always that if you're focused on the impact that you have on people, whether it's your employees, whether it's your clients, whether it's your investors, whether it's you yourself, everything else will fall in place.
Achha.
Right? So, I mean, over the course of my journey, I've become extremely people-centric. Like, I always think about the person first and then project or service or what I can sell to them or whatever. Yeah,
your work is centered around people and building people. So it's all about them, right? And then obviously that applies to your own people working in your own company. You can't put everybody in the same box.
And I feel like हम अक्सर मजाक करते हैं. I hope this will not be taken out of context, but we often joke about it. Like 10 years ago, workplace बड़ी simple होती थी. एक डंडा पकड़ो और सबसे काम करो. Right? Now it's so complex because there's feelings and emotions. And I remember like जब मैंने Minerva start किया था तो I'm not very proud of it, but I used to tell people कि भाई अपने घर के मसले दरवाजे पे छोड़ के आया कर. Right? Like leave them at home. So personal, professional का divide बड़ा
बहुत ज़्यादा था.
But now because of how things are evolving, and I have a person has also evolved, I feel like it also creates a lot of complexities. So that's something I'm still learning how to navigate.
All of this basically requires balance, which is very difficult. But basically your team and you yourself need to develop a culture of that balance. Because ये ना कि अगर if somebody is really overwhelmed with whatever's happening in their personal life, they are bringing it to work, तो काम तो affect होगा. ठीक है, और सबका काम affect होगा उस चीज़ से. So to some level छोड़ के भी आना पड़ेगा. But I think it's also important for the workplace and the people to be sensitive about anybody who's going through something. Because if we lack the sensitivity and they lack the open space or vulnerability where they can be, because it's not humanly possible to actually leave everything at home. You do bring it in your head. Absolutely. And it does affect your work and everybody else's. So agar hum like you said, when there is compassion in the workplace and it comes from leadership, अगर किसी के कोई personal issues और मसले चल भी रहे हैं, when they come in the workplace and they have a safe environment, they will still be able to work better. But if they feel कि ऑलरेडी घर पे या कहीं पे भी उनकी लाइफ में कोई मसले चल रहे हैं, and then they're at work, they feel like, you know, they have no way to sort of express it, or they don't feel safe at work as well. So it's not even about expressing. It's about even be going into from a toxic environment to a toxic environment will not be conducive for anyone. But maybe if the workplace is more, it gives them freedom. It allows them flexibility. You know, if you've had a rough night, you should have the flexibility to be able to come in late. You know, so you need a team and a leader जो कि उस चीज़ के साथ sensitive हो सके और आपको बोल सके कि अच्छा नहीं तुम इस टाइम पे आ जाओ, and then the rest of the team can also understand कि ये है, so बाकी लोग hands on हो जाएं, उसके काम में थोड़ा सा वो कर लें, and that helps everybody because वो रफ नाइट के बाद अगर सुबह जल्दी आ भी रहा है तो उससे काम नहीं होगा. सो वो बैलेंस कि वेयर एवरीबडी अंडरस्टैंड्स एंड गिव्स दैट स्पेस टू द पर्सन, मिल के काम करेंगे, वो चीज़ फिगर आउट आई थिंक हो जाएगी.
So yeah, I guess, I mean, so things I've learned, the importance of compassion, definitely, the importance of naivety, definitely, the importance of understanding that the only way to find out if something is going to work is to actually do it, right? And I think I fall into this trap too many times, and I have to remind myself कि जितना मर्जी सोच लें कि कैसे, अगर ऐसे कर लें तो कैसा होगा, ऐसे जब तक आप करेंगे नहीं पता नहीं चलेगा. And this applies to how you find your passion also. I feel like too many people Google के passion कैसे मेरा, how do I find my passion? I think there's no other way than to
explore,
you try it, and then you will not figure out which one you enjoy more. Right?
You need to explore. You need to spend a lot of time being bored and trying this and trying that and exploring, and something will click.
Bilkul.
And inspire you that, oh, this is what I love doing, you know, or what I want to do or pursue.
Bilkul.
Yeah.
And I think also asking for help. I feel like when you're in a leadership role, you feel like you can't ask for help.
You have to have it together all the time.
And that you need to have all the answers, and all your answers must be correct. And that's just not possible, right? I mean, so I guess you can't, that's actually, that is dehumanizing yourself. Yes, bilkul.
And if you dehumanize yourself, if you're not vulnerable in front of your team and your employees, they will dehumanize you as well.
Bilkul. So I think being okay with not always having the right answer, I think it's important to be decisive, but also be okay with being wrong.
Yeah, and admitting your mistakes, like, oh, you know, ego ko na banaye.
And then asking for help. I've realized that people are generally, you know, open to helping. It's just that you have to ask for it. Like ND2C mein, our primary sponsorship was a random message that we sent to somebody, right, on LinkedIn. And I mean, most of the times the opportunities that have come my way, I never expected कि वो आएंगी. But you know, जैसे you asked me कि कैसे दुबई में कैसे job मिली. It was just like random reaching out. So I think you should just reach out.
Just take that step. Just do it. Yeah.
And ask for help, and generally people will offer you help. Like लोगों को वैसे भी है, you know, if you ask me for help, I'll also feel nice about myself. Right? I will be like, you know, I'm useful. So I think
people want to help.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, in this case, I needed a studio. I put a post on my Facebook. Somebody tagged Muzammil. He was like, 2 घंटे के लिए चाहिए, चलो कर लो. So I mean, generally people are open to helping. It's just हम ज़्यादा सोच रहे होते हैं कि अच्छा मैं पूछूंगी, पता नहीं जवाब आएगा, नहीं आएगा तो कोई बात नहीं, you know, there's always. Similarly, like ND2C से related, people would ask, you know, how did you bring Stefan and Debbie to like
the conference?
To the conference, like they're really big names in design. Like, how did you do it? And
you just like,
we sent
got in touch them with them. Like कुछ लोगों को लगता है कि it's impossible, but just you just do it. So that's amazing. Okay, so you brought the conference up. So how did that happen? वो कहाँ से क्यों start की, कैसे हुई?
So we were at Minerva working on producing workshops that encouraged careers that are not generally recognized as
careers, समझ
और
गई.
lucrative careers नहीं
ठीक है,
समझे जाते,
ठीक है.
जिसमें उस टाइम पे graphic design and design in general,
art art and design.
so I paired with Nida Salman is a graphic designer, visual branding expert. I think she's the best if anybody's looking for it. Plug that in. So she was delivering those workshops for us. And while we were trying to sell those workshops and everything, and I was like, Nida, everybody who comes to us to, sign up, they're not interested in design क्या है, या उनको कोई समझ नहीं है कि design क्या है, उसके principles क्या हैं, the purpose of design क्या है. It's not just to make something look pretty. It's actually to serve a purpose, to solve a problem.
Right.
People are not interested in that. They come to us because they want to learn the tools. Now, you can learn all the tools you want, but if you don't understand why design is important or what design is, you'll not be able to create good designs, right? And so we were like, kya kare? And I was like, there are all these amazing conferences that happen. Like, there needs to be more awareness of design as something that's important, not just, in terms of a career choice, but for businesses. So how your marketing campaign is designed, how your furniture is designed, how whatever, right? Like, so product design hai, branding hai, marketing hai, whatever, jahan design ki application hai, problem solving hai. It's important to create that awareness कि design क्या है, उसका impact business पे क्यों है, why should businesses hire designers, and why should somebody take up design as a career choice. And so I was like, so then let's do it. And initially I think she thought I was joking, but then we started working on it and we putting together, अच्छा अगर हम करेंगे तो ऐसा होगा, all of that. It was really like a lot of blood, sweat and tears. I think there were numerous breakdowns.
Yeah.
I remember हमारी conference से maybe दो हफ्ता पहले the company that was sponsoring our food backed out. And like I was in tears and I was like, this is such a huge cost.
Yeah.
How are we ever, because there was no sponsors, nothing in the bank. बहुत मसला था कि क्या करें. But khair, we got a lot of good speakers on board. We were very particular about the content. Like we were very particular कि अगर कोई हमें पैसे दे के आ रहा है इस conference पे, तो every minute of them listening to the speaker should be worth it. And so we sort of got the best speakers, put together a really good speaker lineup and content. We started selling tickets, and I think this was in 2017. उस वक्त I don't think कोई और conference जो है वो 35,000 और 50,000 का और 75,000 का ticket बेचती थी.
अच्छा.
And we did that, and people bought the ticket because एक तो obviously they could see के speaker lineup बहुत है. But a lot of times when we went to people for sponsorships, a lot of people doubted it, right? Like they were like, अगर पिछले इतने सालों में कोई इतनी बड़ी organization इस तरह की चीज़ नहीं कर सकी, तो कौन है पागल ना, ये तो क्या करेंगे? And a lot of people did not take us seriously till maybe like the last 2 or 3 days when they thought कि ये तो वाकई में हो रहा है, right? Until then, we were in a huge deficit, and we had no idea कि these millions of rupees, how are we ever gonna pay for this money?
That's a lot of stress.
It was a lot of stress, and eventually I was like, okay, I'm gonna sell my jewelry.
What?
So I went and I sold my jewelry.
Really? Oh my god!
And because we didn't have an option.
Blood, sweat, tears, and jewelry. Oh man, अच्छा.
So I sold my jewelry, and we were able to pay off some of the money that Nida ने कुछ अपने पैसे डाले, and we were like, अच्छा चलो कर लेते हैं. And then, I mean, I just feel like everything just eventually fell into place. The speakers made it. Tickets sold out. We had around 700-800 people at the conference on the first year. From across Pakistan. The feedback was amazing. And last कुछ दिनों में tickets भी इतनी बिकी कि जो हमारा deficit बन रहा था for cash flow, not profit. We still didn't make a profit. But जो cash flow का deficit था वो भी किसी तरह cover हो गया. IBM came on board as a sponsor.
Acha.
I think like I'm really grateful to them because they trusted us when everybody else was questioning कि ये तो बिल्कुल पागल हैं, ये पता नहीं क्या चाह रही हैं, सिर्फ होगा नहीं. So obviously everybody was skeptical कि हम इनको support करेंगे तो हमारा भी नाम ख़राब होगा and all of that. But anyway, so that happened. And then the jeweler I sold my jewelry to, after the conference, he was like, you know, I heard कि आपने बहुत अच्छी conference की है.
अच्छा.
So what I want to do is, वो jewelry मेरे पास पड़ी हुई है. And I want you to buy it back from me over the course of whatever number of months you want. And so I got my jewelry back.
How nice.
But it was, the first year was really a roller coaster ride. It was, like I said, a lot of, you know, mental breakdowns, us, you know, breaking down into tears. But wo ho gaya miraculously. And again, I think naivety, asking for help, all of those things sort of work together.
Yeah, so a lot of times what happened was there was this person, I'm not going to name whoever, but a lot of the times my husband would go to this specific person with a lot of his ideas, okay? And he's much older, he's much successful, and my husband would go to him for a lot of with his ideas, and he would tell him, like, he would encourage him. He'd be like, okay, great idea, but all of these problems are going to come, you know, when you try to do this, which was all out of, you know, it was a good place. Yeah, it was genuine. You know, he was telling him कि, you know, तुम ये करोगे तो ये होगा, इस तरह होता है, फलाना होता है. And this is a long time ago. And I noticed that my husband never ended up doing any of those things. क्योंकि होता क्या है कि जब आपको ये सारी चीज़ें पता चलती हैं, बंदा सोचता है अच्छा यार ज़्यादा कॉम्प्लिकेटेड हो रहा है, ठीक है. और एंड इट्स नॉट लाइक कि वो बंदा गलत कह रहा है, वो प्रॉब्लम्स आएंगे, बट वंस यू स्टार्ट एंड यू गेट इनटू इट, यू लर्न हाउ टू नेविगेट थ्रू दोज प्रॉब्लम्स एंड यू लर्न हाउ टू सॉल्व दोज प्रॉब्लम्स एज वेल. बट जब आप पहले से अपने जहन में वो चीज़ें डाल लेते हो तो वो then this is what sort of
also that everybody speaks from their experience.
Bilkul.
Right? And there's so many variables.
Bilkul.
Maybe the timing was right. Maybe they didn't do it right.
Yes.
Maybe they were trying to achieve something else. Like
Yeah.
there's so much. So generally when anybody comes to me and tells me their ideas, I'm like, look, I can tell you what I feel. But I would say again, you will not find out if it's going to work unless
you do it. Good. So when I noticed this with him, I took वो कहते हैं ना कि बंदा note to self करता है. I was like, no matter what, I'm always going to encourage
people.
हाँ, कि वो चाहे मुझे idea बहुत stupid भी लगे ना, that doesn't define कि वो बंदा नहीं कर सकता. Like if somebody is dreaming big, tell them that they can do it. And if nobody else stops them, they might actually be able to do it. Yes. You know, like I'm no one to judge or decide कि यार इसने तो अभी दुनिया नहीं देखी है, इसे नहीं पता है वो. हाँ, so it's nice that you said this and reinforced this thought in my head. I always say, कोई किसी भी चीज़ के साथ आपके पास आते हो, just encourage and empower people.
Yes.
Encourage them, and if you have resources to empower them in any way, just do that. Baki, if they have a problem, let them come to you, help them solve it, but don't tell them all the problems.
Yeah.
Because that's not helping anybody.
You see, I mean, I'm sure there are other people who've tried podcasts. Yeah. नहीं चली होगी, for instance, right? But that doesn't mean कि किसी की podcast नहीं चलेगी.
हाँ.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even about trying to do something very different or new. It's also sometimes two people do the same thing, which is very normal. Yeah. But it doesn't work because the circumstances are different. Your connections are different. Maybe you have the help that they don't have. You know, there's so much, so many variables.
Yeah. From the person you are, to the life you've lived, to the circumstances you have, to the resources you actually have to deal with whatever problems जो आपको आ सकती हैं. So yeah, it's a mindset, can do mindset, and it cannot do sort of.
I think a long time ago I would, you know, अगर मेरे mind में कोई idea होता था और कोई और कर लेता तो मैं बहुत bitter होती थी कि you know इसने कर लिया और मैंने, you know, yeah, sometimes you've told them your idea and they executed it. But over time, I've also learned that if somebody else executed it and I didn't, it's not their fault.
It's not their fault, yeah. बिल्कुल. बिल्कुल. Yeah.
So I can't tell somebody कि वो इसलिए work नहीं किया because, you know, तुम भी ना करो because नहीं होगा. But maybe I'm just not making that effort for it to actually happen.
Yeah. Okay, so there's something that you mentioned before this podcast is about how your mind sort of functions. Can you tell me about that on the podcast? उससे मैंने आज नहीं पूछा because I want to know here. Yeah.
So I was recently told by somebody to get, and I think मुझे हर कुछ अरसे के बाद कोई कहता है कि आप इसके लिए diagnosis करा लें, आप you know bipolar हैं या आपको ADHD होगा.
हाँ.
So I have this. If you look at my laptop also, there's always like 100 tabs open. Even when I'm trying to like consciously cut it down. And it's the same thing in my head. Except that all those tabs are connected. So if I'm going to sit down to work on a podcast, or this podcast maybe I'm, you know, talking about personal branding, I'll be like, oh, I have a personal branding client and I need to do this for them. So I'm going to switch and be like, okay, I'm going to do this. And then as soon as I go there, I'll be like, you know, but pehle mujhe iska ek framework bana lena chahiye. And so generally mere dimag mein compartmentalization ka koi concept nahi. Which is very funny because in my physical life, like in outside of my mind, compartmentalization is extremely important. And maybe it's one of the reasons why I am extremely, like, give me any place of chaos and I will convert it into structure. I will make sense out of it. And I think it comes from the fact that in my head it can't happen. So I'll make it happen in other areas. Right? And so it's extremely difficult for me to keep things separate. I don't know if during the podcast I did that. I didn't notice. But maybe I did switch from one thing to another thing to another thing. When I listen to the podcast. Actually,
I think it was actually pretty smooth flow. मुझे तो feel नहीं हुआ.
But generally, that's how I operate. And in conversations, if I'm watching a TV show, for instance, I will always find a connection somewhere else, and then my mind will wander
go there.
And then, you know, so everything is like very merged. Everything, I have to do everything at the same time. I have to think about, and अब मैं थोड़ा सा बेहतर हो गया है, but because my mind was always working faster than I could talk, I would slur a lot and I would completely forget words. And अब बेहतर है काफ़ी, I hope. But yeah, that has been a huge problem because I just like doing a lot of stuff together and I can't separate things from each other. So अगर मैंने ये करना है तो इसके लिए ये तो करना ही पड़ेगा. और ये करना है तो फिर ये भी करना पड़े. So yeah, that's a huge, very big problem. हाँ. So I think जो high functioning लोग होते हैं ना, which have a lot to do and उनकी life में they've done a lot of things, many different areas to manage. Leadership position itself brings so much. उनके साथ ये होता है, like there's obviously too much, right? And for me, मेरे साथ अगर मैं सिर्फ अपनी बात करूँ तो मुझे इस तरह फील होता है I have a lot on my plate, like too much on my plate, then you know I can वो क्या उसे कहते हैं more in your mouth than you can chew type चीज़ ना, वो वाला problem. And I also have this problem of taking up stuff, you know, not saying no,
and getting excited about new ideas and new things, even though I'm currently working on something like नहीं ये भी शुरू कर लेते हैं और ये भी शुरू कर लेते हैं, which I have worked on now a lot, especially after I had a baby. So I was like, hey, listen, like I can't, you know. So but for me, I think and this my own mind or this approach to life of mine, it gave me a lot of anxiety because a lot of times what would happen with me कि at least you would do something ना. मेरे साथ ये होता था कि जब मैं सोचती थी ना मेरे पास ये सब कुछ मेरे दिमाग में चल रहा है तो मैं the anxiety would make me stiff.
You'd be paralyzed.
Yeah, I'd be paralyzed.
That happens with me also.
अब क्या, you know, and you know this जिस तरह मेरे साथ ये होता है, because when I wake up in the morning, my WhatsApp is already exploding with people in my team asking me questions, asking for approvals. इसका क्या करना है, इसका क्या करना है. Morning हुई है, everybody has to do their tasks, but their tasks are very dependent on approvals and decisions जो मैंने लेनी है. तो वो फिर obviously घर की चीज़ें होती हैं सुबह सुबह, like being very candid, वो खाने में क्या बनना है, अच्छा बच्चे को मैंने क्या खिलाना है, उसकी चीज़ें क्या है, क्या रूटीन है, आज क्या एक्टिविटी है. So it's just like a lot of times in the morning I'm just paralyzed. बट वो सिर्फ तब होता है जब, बिकॉज आई एम अ ह्यूज प्लानर, सो मेरा होता है कि मैं अपना हफ्ता और अपना दिन वो आई प्लान एवरीथिंग पहले से स्ट्रक्चर हो, पहले से प्लानिंग,
बिकॉज गिवन द सिचुएशन उसके बगैर
नहीं हो सकता. बट एंड व्हेन आई हैव थिंग्स प्लान्ड तो थिंग्स आर you know move much better, move up.
So I think you can, I'm sure you can relate to what I'm saying, right? Because that's exactly in physical terms you will plan and structure, but in your head,
yes,
unless you do that,
I have to put it down. It has to come out of here. Absolutely. On here, Bilkul. On paper, on phone, wherever, and then it makes sense to me, and then I can follow that.
And do you always have to do it like multiple times in a month? या एक दफा करके हो जाता?
नहीं. So मेरा तो I do it every week. हाँ, and sometimes I do it every week कि ये मैंने इस हफ्ते में, वरना तो मेरा दिमाग फट जाता है ना कि you know, and then दिमाग ना भी फट रहा हो, वो मेरी लाइफ में नज़र आना शुरू हो जाता है. एवरीथिंग इज़ ऑल ओवर द प्लेस, यू नो, कि अच्छा ये प्लान किया था, ये हो गया, ये नहीं हो पा रहा. बेसिकली आई एम द सॉर्ट ऑफ पर्सन हु इफ़ आई डोंट प्लान, इफ़ आई डोंट ब्रिंग इट आउट ऑन पेपर, फिक्स इट, तो मुझे एकदम से पैरालाइज हो जाती हूँ. मुझे नहीं समझ आता व्हाट डिसीजन टू टेक नाउ.
I can completely relate, and I think I'm very averse to decision making, which as a leader, imagine how.
Yeah, me too. I hate it.
Why do I have to make this decision? Can somebody do it for me? But so I think you're right कि वो जो paralysis है वो मुझे भी बिल्कुल वैसी होता है जब मुझे पता होता है कि मैंने करना क्या है, but at the same I just can't. Because I mean, it's literally like you're paralyzed. I can't even put it out on paper when I'm completely overwhelmed. Right? Because that's also a task.
Yeah, it's also a task. So that's why I think the best time to do it is to do it when you're not feeling paralyzed. So just what I did was that
don't wait for.
Yeah. So what I started doing was that I made weekly planning and weekly reflection part of my life. Okay, every Sunday I will do my reflection of the past week.
You have a notebook.
Yeah, I do
right?
that.
I have it.
Oh, that's why I have it. So reflection of the past week and a plan of the next week. And I do it on Sunday आराम से बैठ के, ताकि वो, और फिर every day का मैं एक वो कर लेती हूँ a bit more detailed कि अच्छा इस तरह से. But again उसके लिए भी time चाहिए होता है, तो sometimes वो भी नहीं हो पाता. So yeah, I think it really depends. I think sometimes नहीं आपसे प्लान हो रहा कुछ, sometimes you just have to go with the flow. Like literally sometimes, you know, people in my team या जो भी होती हैं कहती हैं please tell me कि मैं next क्या करूँ, and I'll do it. Because when I'm in that paralyzed position, literally I ask my husband or Yusra in my team, who basically knows everything that I have to do at work at least, तो मैं उसका कहती हूँ कि मुझे बता दो, रोबोट की तरह ना इस वक्त मैं ये भी चेक कर दूँ, ये भी चेक कर दूँ, बिकॉज मेरा दिमाग नहीं चल रहा है इस वक्त.
आई थिंक वो एक डिसीजन फटीग, लाइक व्हेन यू आर ऑलरेडी ओवरवेल्म्ड, इसके बाद हमें कोई नौकरी नहीं देगा वैसे. बट आई विल टेल यू दैट वी हैव फिगर्ड इट आउट. सो नहीं, I think like for instance for decision making, to reduce the number of decisions I have to make, I've now come up with, you know, if this then this.
अच्छा.
Right? Similarly in terms of clothes, like that's also a decision to make.
I was just going to say कि कपड़े पहनना सुबह, because you are making so many decisions.
Yeah. So I don't do that anymore. अगर जो कपड़े लटक रहे हैं वो जिस ऑर्डर में लटक रहे हैं उसमें से जो पहला होगा वो मैं पहन के, right? So like there's some. This is a very crude form of the process that I would make for other decisions, but I think it's important to also think what decisions do you have to make too frequently.
Yeah, okay.
How can you turn those into a process?
Right.
Where it's simple. If this, then I'm going to do this.
Okay.
If this, then I'm... Of course, हर situation में वो नहीं हो सकता. Sometimes things are very subjective. But that I think also... And then obviously building your team enough for them to make
some decisions
of those decisions themselves, कि वो छोटी छोटी चीज़ें. And one thing that really helps me जब भी मैं regularly कर रही होती हूँ is writing. If I'm writing, my life and my mind will suddenly find that calm.
Yes. Because you know why मेरा जो planner है और उसका the whole concept उसके पीछे है ही writing. The thing is कि because this is how I used to feel. कि when I used to write things down, I felt more resolved.
Yeah.
In every way. My emotions, my thoughts, whatever I'm thinking, whatever I'm feeling. Or I think I've said this many times because this is literally my brand and everything. And the thought behind why I started it was that when you sort of give words to your thoughts and your emotions, you have to identify the words.
Absolutely.
Once you start, क्योंकि आप एक चीज़ feel कर रहे हो, तो अगर आप उसको आइडेंटिफाई नहीं करोगे ना तो आप बस रिएक्ट करोगे. बट जब आपने आइडेंटिफाई कर ली ना कि ये फीलिंग है, वो आप आइडेंटिफाई तब करते हो कि आपको लिखनी पड़ रही है, तो आप वर्ड ढूंढोगे, पुट द वर्ड डाउन. नाउ यू नो व्हाट यू आर फीलिंग. नाउ यू विल कम अप विद अ रिस्पॉन्स टू डील विद दैट फीलिंग rather than just reacting all day to all the feelings that you're feeling,
So I mean, हम कल्चर की बात कर रहे थे, how do you build that culture? And I feel like writing brings so much clarity.
Yeah.
And not just writing about, दिन में मैंने क्या करना है, मेरा plan. Generally writing about anything.
Anything, yes.
Gives you clarity. It helps you develop a curiosity, critical thinking. A lot of times you write things like, जैसे अगर आपका कोई बहुत strong opinion है, try writing about it and justifying it. Right? And you might figure that maybe you have the wrong opinion. Yeah. Maybe you can't back it up. So what we've actually now done at Minerva is that we have an internal newsletter.
Very nice.
And everybody has to write something. It can be anything. Maybe you read a book and you found something really interesting about it and you want to summarize it for everyone else. Or it's how you've been feeling this month. So every month that news, and it has become one of my favorite things to read. I look forward to it every month because everybody writes about something so different. But again, the idea was to, sometimes, a lot of times you realize what people are going through. Like as a leader, आप newsletter में से निकाल सकते हैं कि she's feeling overwhelmed. Right? But even otherwise, I feel like the entire idea was to instill that creative thinking, to help them with that clarity, to put people in the habit of writing something. And
this is so nice. I love this.
And I really enjoy reading it. Like somebody will talk about their personal life, someone will talk about, something really scientific and technical.
Something they read, something they watched.
And they have an opinion on it. Ki acha maine ye padha and I feel like this is how it applies to my life. Or they will share an experience. But I feel like it's such a great, like we do our check-ins and everything. But it's such a great way for all of us to learn more about what everybody's interests are and, but for me, writing, I feel like everybody should write.
Agreed.
Everybody. कुछ भी लिख लें, फजूल कुछ भी लिख लें, but लिख लें.
Like you said, writing brings resolve. It brings calm. It brings a lot of context to your own thoughts, which is lacking a lot of the times. आपको पता भी नहीं होता. You're just basically it's more conscious living. Because otherwise you're just sort of living. But when you start writing, whatever you are writing, it brings more.
And you also feel the need to structure some of that, right? Some of those thoughts into when you're putting it on paper or whatever format.
And Sana, I feel like ab zyada zarurat hai. The reason that how this thought came to me or why I started doing it was because ab jo hai na, because we are reading, consuming, watching too much. So our brains are literally like pagal ho chuke hain hamare dimag because of the overload of information that we didn't even ask for, that we are receiving all the time. Pehle it was just people we interacted with. Now it's not just your mainstream news, social media pe it's crazy from one app to another, and the things that you're watching and consuming and people you are meeting and then everything.
Overload.
It's an overload. So it's so important to take that time away from that overload of information and whatever entertainment or whatever you are consuming, कि आप बैठो अपने साथ and figure out who you are and what you think. Because most of the time you don't even know what you're thinking because you're just consuming that. You're just reading all of that. And in that process, I feel like people have really lost themselves, their own identity. Where do they come from, and what does that lead to the person that they are now? Like, people don't know who they are anymore.
Continuing from what you're saying, this is something that I've only gotten comfortable with over the past few years, which is that because of social media and the need to fit in, we feel the need to have an opinion on everything.
Yes.
And I realized a few years ago कि जब मुझे नहीं पता एक चीज़ के बारे में तो नहीं है मेरा ओपिनियन उसके ऊपर.
होना भी नहीं चाहिए.
Sometimes I don't know. Maybe this person's right, maybe they're right. I don't know. And sometimes maybe I shouldn't care.
You don't have to care about everything. You don't have to have an opinion about everything. And just anything, yaar. Just take out the time to stay in touch with the person that you are. It's just so important. Which is why वो reflect करना कि आप क्या करते रहे हो पूरे हफ्ते में, क्या आप सोचते रहे हो. It's really important, because if you are because then you're mindlessly letting the world shape you.
Yes.
And you're very lost in that. So
I recently started seeing a coach because I felt like
life coach.
Yeah, so career coach, life coach. और उससे पहले I went to a therapist as well and all of that. But I just feel like I felt like I've coached too many people. Maybe it's time for somebody to coach me. I feel like generally वो एक awareness जो अगर आप खुद से uncomfortable हैं asking yourself those questions, get somebody else to
ask you. That's what life coaches do. They don't tell you what to do. They just ask you questions to get you to think. They sort of lead you in a direction.
And third person perspective, I personally think that why should you go to a personal branding strategist? Why can't you answer those questions for yourself, for example? Right? Sometimes when you're in that situation, when you're living that life, it's very difficult to make sense of things. Yeah. But a third person or an independent
objective and दूर से
उसको वो patterns आपकी life के बहुत ज़्यादा clearly नज़र आएंगे जो आपको नहीं नज़र आ रहे, right? So people, speaking to people can also sometimes just help you find answers without them telling you, okay, this is it. This is what you need to do. But it pushes you. I think generally we're uncomfortable asking ourselves questions, right? उसके लिए time भी निकालना पड़ता है, सोचना भी पड़ता है. A lot of times, ये बहुत ही recent, like within the past 10 days is something where I realized that all the exercise that I ask my personal branding clients to do, half of them I've never done for myself, right? And I really need to, but it's uncomfortable, right? To अपने साथ आप कहते हैं छोड़ो
but makes sense.
But it's sometimes good to speak to somebody about it.
I've learned so much from you, Sana.
I really enjoyed it. I think I had fun saying everything that I wanted to say. I don't know if it answered your question.
No,
I just said
it was so insightful. I feel like sometimes you need those reminders and someone to open your eyes to a lot. You sort of helped me do that today. With a lot of the things that you said, and I'm sure कि बहुत सारे viewers or listeners, they needed to hear these things as well. बहुत insightful था, especially because for me the past year has been very, because I had a baby, and इससे पहले I've always been a very ambitious sort of person. I've done this and that and this and that, and and having a baby really sort of slowed that down. And what it did for me as well, after becoming a mother, I felt like that's the only thing I knew how to do, and everything that I knew how to do before that I didn't know anymore. I don't know, are you a mother?
No.
Okay. So for me, like it's been a lot of a struggle to come back into a leadership role, understand that, and to not have जो हमने बात की थी कि I can consistently expected कि अच्छा अब मैं I've come back in, तो मुझे trying to be the way that I used to be, and also trying to have the answers to everything, have it together. The truth is that after all that, I don't always have it together, because I have a huge thing on my mind and on my plate now. I can't just, when I come in, I can't forget about that and have my shit together at work completely, have all the answers, know what I'm doing, know what everybody should be doing. So this was a very refreshing conversation, because इसमें बहुत सारे ऐसे aspects थे that were, I could relate to, that reminders, the things that I needed to learn. So I'm sure कि बहुत सारी और लड़कियाँ जो ये चीज़ें सुन रही हैं, हर किसी का अपना होता है, but they can find the thing that they relate to in that conversation. So I think this was filled with a lot of that. So thank you so much for coming and doing that and having this conversation with me. What I love about this podcast and talking to a lot of women is कि उसमें ये है कि वो तो मैं कर रही हूँ कि for a lot of women and people to learn, but मैं एक personal उस पर बताऊँ कि जब बड़े होते ना आपको इतना ऐसा एक सर्कल रह जाता है एंड फिर आपकी उस तरह वाली जो ग्रोथ होती है, जो कॉन्वर्सेशन से होती है, वो कम होना शुरू हो जाती है बिकॉज यू आर जस्ट स्टक इन योर hole and you're doing your thing and you're doing day in and day out your stuff.
It can be very lonely.
Yeah. The higher you go up,
the lonelier you are.
You are. और मतलब मेरे तो friend circle और उसमें इस तरह के लोग हैं ही नहीं. So what I love about being on the podcast is creating those connections and having those conversations that I'm literally just dying to have because I don't have people who can. Like मेरा एक circle है friends का that are moms but they're not working. So I connect with them on the mom level, but working mom is a very different thing. Yes. So वो मेरे लिए वो नहीं होता. फिर जो मेरी बाकी working friends हैं, none of them is in like a proper leadership position या उस तरह का उनका काम नहीं है जो मेरा है. Like they're working but then they're not moms. So I'm so yeah, तो मुझे ना उसमें वो मिलता है ना वो. So I like to have these conversations. It opens my mind up as well. You really helped me do that.
And I think what you said about as a mother, the women that I've worked with, even, people who want to come back, I feel like as a mother, there is this expectation of selflessness. Right? And compromise.
Yeah.
And like all
sacrifice and all.
Absolutely. But I feel like a bitter mother will not be a good mother.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you shouldn't feel guilty about pursuing your dreams. Of course, वो balance आपको obviously maintain करना पड़ता है. But I feel like a child who sees their mother going after what she really wants to do will grow up seeing a role model for themselves.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I think कि हम generally, particularly in our society, the selflessness is really glamorized.
Yeah, it's really glamorized. Yeah.
And it's important to remember that you need to be happy for your child.
Because it's glamorized, you feel guilty ना about not doing. अगर वो इतनी glamorized ना होती,
मैं तो अच्छी माँ हूँ.
हाँ, तो इसका feel ना होता. But I think, but मुझे कभी कभार भी होता है कि उसको glamorize इसलिए ही किया गया ताकि women who had no choice but to sacrifice and compromise their life, they could feel better about themselves. Do you get it? Like मैंने ये सोचा कि अगर glamorize ने किया तो वो बेचारी औरतें जिनको करना पड़ रहा है sacrifice or compromise, they don't have a choice. So
I think at the end,
I think that's where it came from.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess at the end of the day, what matters is that this should be a personal choice.
Yes.
I want to work with a child. I don't want to, whatever the decision is, as long as it is that woman's personal choice.
Basically, आप mom shame ना करें जो नहीं कर रही हैं वो sacrifice हो, या जो भी अपने लिए अगर कुछ करें तो आप उनको mom shame ना करें, और जो कर रही हैं
already आपको बताने
की ज़रूरत नहीं है. हाँ, और जो sacrifice हो वो करें, you don't need to make them feel bad. As long as they're doing it happily, let them do it.
Yeah, as long as it's there.
Yeah. But I think that brings this conversation to an end.
Thank you so much for having me. I loved talking about all of this.
Yeah, so
just like you said, right? Sometimes you crave to have these meaningful conversations.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for tuning into this. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and leave comments below about the conversation and what you guys think. I'll see you again next time, and Allah Hafiz.